Let's see. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Book with Career Madricha, and I'm here today with Michelle Kaufman, who is awesome, by the way. Michelle is a fixed income and derivatives market specialist at Bloomberg LP. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself, and then I'll ask her a couple of questions about her career, about her education, about why she chose it, and we'd love for you to, if you have any questions after the session, feel free to type them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to respond to you. So, Michelle, over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us what a typical day in your life looks like in your role at Bloomberg.
Sure. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. It's a fun thing to do. So I'm probably about 10 years out of college now. I originally went to Y&J for grade school, Mayanot for high school, Harova in Israel, and then MIT for college. And I guess I started my career at Credit Suisse as a trader, and 2 years ago I went to Bloomberg as a market specialist. Day to day, the nice thing about my new job is that it varies a lot. So there'll be some days like today where I'm going to see clients in Philadelphia. We might meet with, the head of the pricing department. Last week, I had a great opportunity to meet with the CFO of a major institution and kind of talk about the problems that are hard for them in their complex, they have these complex financial instruments, and how can Bloomberg help with that? So that might be one type of day. Another type of day, I'd be at the office kind of fielding lots of questions from colleagues, having meetings and trying to prepare for those client interactions.
That's great. So, it's interesting as we think about the work that we do during the day, some of our skills and talents that make us good at our jobs come naturally to us. And some we really have to work on in order to be effective in our roles. Can you tell us about some of the skills that come naturally to you and then others that you've had to work at?
Yeah, sure. My career has definitely not been a linear one. I studied materials engineering in college, so no finance, no sales. So a lot of things, I had to learn, and I learned later on in life. I think the things that come naturally are, ease with spreadsheets. I really like to, try to figure out problems with numbers. That's something that I enjoy, and that's not too difficult. The things that I really had to work at, and that I end up using a lot more often now, is how to relate to people, how to, keep a relationship strong and have really good follow-up and all those kinds of soft skills that I didn't have to do my previous job, and I certainly never learned in college. And then also learning new areas, like finance was something that I'd never studied before. I ended up, working pretty hard the last 2.5, 3 years to take my CFA, which is a Chartered Financial Analyst certification. And, some of the stuff I had known from doing finance for 7, 8 years, but a lot of it came new, all this accounting, a lot of topics that I really had to learn. So, the learning doesn't stop when you finish school.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I noticed that over the past probably 10 years or so, jobs really aren't as linear as they used to be, right? It used to be if you were an analyst, you only worked with numbers. If you were a programmer, you only worked with computers. And now so much of it becomes interactive, is really connected to the business or the customer, whatever that might be. So that's really interesting. Did you ever expect to be where you are today? So when you think back to your career aspirations from high school or from college, would your 16-year-old self be surprised to see you in your role today?
Yeah, I think to a good degree, I would be. A lot of it was kind of taking opportunities as they came, and not really. There was never any 5-year or 10-year plan that I thought I would end up in this type of role. Once I was already probably about 4 or 5 years into my first career as a trader, I did start thinking about Bloomberg, or kind of more of using my experience to help other people. But, high school or even college, I would never have thought of it.
So when you were in high school, what were you expecting to do when you grew up? What were your aspirations?
Well, I loved mock trial. I helped start the team at my note, and I thought for sure I would be a lawyer. that was the I think I was probably my yearbook that I was going to be a lawyer or a justice. That was my aspirations. And then life kind of changes, right? So in college, I actually helped start the team at MIT for mock trial, and I really loved it. But I realized there's a difference between like a hobby and something that you find to be fun and a career path. As it is, my husband, who, we weren't married at the time, but when we met, he was in law school and really helped to dissuade me that this wasn't like a great lifestyle or career path for me. So, hopefully I think I learned some skills. I had a lot of fun, but then was able to direct my energy towards something that I think is probably a better job in the long run.
But it's so interesting because in your role, you do use a lot of skills that are mock trial or law oriented, right? You do a lot of negotiating,
Yes.
A lot of influencing, right? So do you find that helps you?
It's a good point. I hadn't thought of it before, but there probably is a decent amount of overlap for the skills that I learned and the things that I liked, in that hobby that really kind of makes me more effective now. And being able to pick up on little tiny details that could then be, useful later on when you're listening, you're trying to figure out a complex situation and breaking it down. So yeah, you're probably, it's probably a good point.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you think, when you're in high school or college, you might see, a certain number of very finite careers, and you think, oh, well, if I like to negotiate, I can be a lawyer. But one of our goals at Career Madricha is to really share stories of women like Michelle who use skills in different ways. So really interesting. So back to your college career. So you mentioned that you majored in engineering. Where did that come from, and how does that add value to your job today?
Well, if I tell you the true story, it's honestly a little embarrassing in hindsight, but I'll tell you. When I came to MIT, people there are, very, very studious. They're very into their work, and they don't typically dress up to go to class. So a lot of people would, wear pajamas or, it was not my thing. I usually like put on clothing. So because of that, and because of just, I guess, my demeanor, people automatically assumed that I was a finance major or a management major. And for some reason, when you start at MIT, that's a derogatory thing. So when people would say, oh, we had numbers for all the courses. Oh, you're course 15, right? I'd be offended. No, I'm materials engineering. It was kind of silly at the time, but there was definitely pressure to be an engineering major. And as it happened, we had a course in my freshman year with the materials engineering department that was fantastic. So the professor was amazing, and I really liked that area. It's kind of similar to chemistry in a way. So I studied materials engineering, and then of course, your senior year, when there's career fair and all the companies are on campus, all the engineers would go to the banks. So as much as they kind of made finance and management out to be the bad word in your freshman year, by the time people were looking for jobs, they were definitely pretty into it. As far as, there's so much that you learn from a different discipline, even if you don't practice it. So a lot of the concepts, a lot of things I've probably forgotten more than, I know about materials engineering at this point because it's been so long, but you don't forget, how to learn, how to, cope under pressure. We had a lot of problem sets in group work. All those are extremely meaningful, every day. And, there's a lot that you learn, a lot that you can't remember if you don't practice it all the time, but still very valuable.
It's so interesting because it does teach you how to think, right? And, choosing your major in college doesn't always define your destiny for the rest of your life, right? Sometimes it does. Like probably if you're pre-med and then you go to medical school, you're probably going to be a doctor, but not always. I heard a lecture from Gwynne Shotwell, who's the president of SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's private sector aerospace company. And she said she's got two daughters, and they had all kinds of dreams about what they wanted to major in. I think one was interested in like sociology, and the other wanted to do like gender studies or something. And she told them, she says, you need to major in engineering during your undergrad. And that will teach you how to think and it will give you a foundation for life. Then if you want, you can go for your master's in underwater basket weaving or wherever. So, it's interesting because choosing, when you take certain courses in college, especially during your undergrad, it gives you a foundation and it can make you more appealing to employers. The other thing that I find so fascinating is when you mentioned that engineers are going to the banks. So many people assume that if you work at a bank or a financial institution, that they only have jobs there that are related to finance. And really, you can be an engineer in a bank or in a hospital or in a manufacturing facility, right? And so over the course of our next interviews, you'll all get a sense as to not only do you want to identify the type of role you're looking for, right? So the job that aligns with your skills and interest, but you also want to think where that job can be done. You can be a social worker in a school or in a hospital or in a corporation. You can do research, you can do clinical stuff. So I think that's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing, Michelle. Couple more questions. So tell us how you juggle work and life. So there's a lot of talk about work-life balance. I personally have given up on that. I think balance makes it sound like everything's always perfect and it's not. But tell us how you juggle it all and tell us how you've shifted your focus based on what was going on in your life or your work at any given time.
So it's a great question, and it's definitely something that everyone, will always bump up against at some point. And it's not just me, with my job. My friends who are teachers have similar struggles. It's just everyone has it to a degree. I think there are a few things that give me the ability to handle it pretty well. One would be I have a very supportive husband, and that's very key in my eyes. But they don't necessarily have to come as good as my husband is now. There was some training that I want to pat myself on the back on. When my husband wanted to have kids before I did, I said, well, none of us cook. How are we going to have kids if we don't cook? So he took on cooking. Then when we had our first kid and he wanted another one, I said, I don't want to be taking over all the work for a kid. So he learned to be excellent, so he does a lot of the nighttime duty. He really is a co-parent in every sense of the word. And some might even say that he's better at, some of the kid things than I am. So I would say that that's a pretty big one. We also have very good help at home. I have an au pair who I trust and have trained very well to, not just help with some of the little things, but can actually do logistics and help my kids arrange play dates and a lot of things that you wouldn't ordinarily think of hired help to do. But then I also try to keep in perspective, my work and my personal life. So I'm very good at scheduling. I keep a calendar with everything, so neither one slips. And then I also make sure that when I'm at work, I'm a lot more productive, I find, than some of the single colleagues that I have. They spend a lot of time in the pantry schmoozing. I don't have that luxury, and I don't think will get me farther in work either. So when I'm at work, I'm in the zone and I'm working. And when I'm home, I try to do the same thing by putting away my phone and being present for my family. So what it ends up meaning is that my colleagues know to respect my time. They don't, a few times people have tried to call me when it's, 7 or 8 at night, it had better be a real emergency because they know from my tone that I'm never doing it again if it isn't. So you said boundaries, and honestly what I found is that I had some colleagues who really respect me for it. They had been kind of taken advantage of and were responding to emails so quickly, and their work product suffers when they spend too much time after work doing work topics. So, I get a lot of respect at work for making those divisions clear and sticking to them. So I think it honestly, having a full life at home, gets me the respect at work that I need. And for the people who don't work closely with me and don't know me quite as well, they don't even know I have kids. When they find out months later, they're always like, wow, how do you do it? But, I try to make it when I'm at work, I'm fully present. And, when I'm not, I'm fully present with my kids.
That's so great. Thank you. One last question. What piece of advice would you offer young women in our community who are considering your career area?
I would say, one of the best ways to really find out how you like something is, by talking to a lot of people, anyone who's, I mean, I'd be happy to kind of give you a tour around Bloomberg if you were ever interested or in the area. We have, a lot of resources at our fingertips in the Jewish community. People always will appreciate if you're proactive and want to just shadow them. But I would say just be, open to opportunities as they come. Don't pigeonhole yourself so much into one area that you can't kind of think outside of the box. And, just always be open to kind of learning new things, because again, the kind of things that I know, and honestly, I learn more on the job every day. So, there's really never a time when I can say, okay, I know everything I have to know, I'm good. There, just when I feel comfortable, we get some new area that Bloomberg has, some innovation that we have to learn and we have to position to clients. So, as long as you're always open to, learning new things, that keeps the job exciting, and it also keeps your skills very relevant. So just keep on learning and keep on being inquisitive.
That is so great. Thank you so much for your time, Michelle. I know you're busy. We appreciate the time that you gave us. Everyone, if you have any questions or things that you'd like to ask Michelle, feel free to use the chat box or the comment section, and we will do our best to get you answers. Have a great day.
Thanks.